Hey guys, how's it going? Teri Slater here. Are you feeling frustrated because you really want to stick to a budget, but every time you try it, it just doesn't work? Well, stay tuned because today I'm going to talk to you about 3 different strategies that make it so much easier to stick to a budget. So first things first, I'm Teri Slater, and on my channel I come out with new videos every single Wednesday. So if you want to subscribe to the channel, you can hear about some different financial tips every single week to help you stay on track. All right, so this week we're going to talk about 3 simple strategies to help you finally stick to a budget. All right. First things first, number 1, you need to create a plan. And when you create a plan, I just want to give you a heads up and a forewarning that it's not going to be perfect in the first month. A lot of us don't know exactly where we're spending all of our money, and that's okay. Sometimes it takes a while to get into this groove. So what you're going to do is you're going to create a plan, you're going to work through it for the first month, and then readjust and see how you do, moving forward in the next month. So when it comes to writing down your first ever plan, what you're going to do is just simply write out how much you think you're going to spend on everything. So you want to write down your mortgage, your utilities, your groceries, your dining out, clothing, kids' hobbies, your hobbies, all those things, write it all out. Okay, so that's going to be step 1. You've got to write everything down and don't put it away. Do not shove it in a notebook somewhere or in a drawer so that you're not going to look at it again. You've got to have it someplace where you're going to be able to see it, because step number 2 is holding yourself accountable. All right, so with step number 2, you've got to hold yourself accountable. Now, I don't need you to carry around with you some sort of a list that has your mortgage payment, your electric bill, your phone bill, and all that. We don't need to do that. It's just going to kind of muddy the waters for you. But what you do want to keep track of is, what did you say you were going to spend on clothing for the month or dining out for the month? And now how are you going to hold yourself accountable to that? So one thing I'd like to ask right away is, do you have some sort of an app that you use to plan and track your spending? If you do, I would love for you to put that in the comments below. I am super old school. I actually write down everything on a little sheet of paper and I carry it around in my purse so that I can kind of keep track of, okay, I said I would spend this much money on clothing this month, and I kind of keep track of where I'm going towards that. So my way of staying accountable is that I keep receipts and I come home and I write them all down in a ledger so that I can kind of keep running balances. That's how I do it, but I also consider personal finance a bit of a hobby. So I realize that that's not something everyone's going to do. But maybe you and your spouse both have an app on your phone so that you can see what each other is doing, because if you've got different accounts and you're both spending money on groceries, you might not be able to keep track of how things are going. So you want to do something like an app or keeping everything written down, or another way that a lot of people keep track of what they're doing is by taking cash out of the bank. So if you know that you're going to spend, let's say, $500 a month in groceries, then you can take out all $500 at once, or maybe $250 here and $250 there, so you're not carrying around big wads of cash. But then you take that cash with you to the grocery store, and if you spend more than what you have in that cash there, you got to make a decision. You're either going to put something back, or you're going to start taking cash from like a different pile, right? So I don't do so well with cash. I actually would prefer to kind of keep everything on a debit card system, but you've got to be able to look at, how are you doing? How are you tracking with what you said you were going to do? And if you're overspending, even where you said you were going to kind of cut back on something, then at what point are you willing to say no to yourself, right? Because a lot of times we are the ones who are, making the decisions to spend the money when it's more than what we said. So we'll get into it a little bit more later, but for right now, I want you to realize that if you overspend in one category, you got to kind of balance things out by cutting back somewhere else. So you need to have a way to make yourself accountable. Okay, so step number 3 is that you want to now edit and correct for next month. And one of the biggest things that I see when I'm talking to people about their money is they don't actually have a good idea of how much money they spend on groceries for a given month. And I realize that there can be a lot of fluctuations if you've got guests in town, or, seasonal foods, or, things like that. This can be all over the place, but you've got to have somewhat of a good baseline. If you think that you spend $800 a month in groceries and you actually are spending closer to $1,200 a month, that's a pretty big swing. So just understand that with most of us, it takes several months before we get to a place where we're really able to say, this is what I expect to spend, and I'm pretty pretty able to stick to what I said. So it's going to take a few months. It's going to be a little bit of a challenge to sort of like, get your feet and your under you and your bearings about you so that you know exactly what your spending looks like and then where you're going to course correct. So that's 3 pretty simple steps on how to stick to a budget. So if you have questions, comments, type them in the comments below. I would love to hear it. I'd be happy to respond to any questions that you have as well. I'll be back at you next week, but if you also want to I have a handy guide that is just how to track what you're spending. So I will link to that below in the show notes. And if you want to grab that, you can check that out in the link below or head over to terislater.com where you can also get a copy of the guide there. All right. Thanks so much and have a great week. Bye.